Hey everyone, welcome. Thanks for finding us tonight online. This is prayer meeting. If you stumbled across us or if you found us on purpose, we are glad that you're here. We're going to do our book study here in a second or two, and then we'll pray together. Just a reminder that tonight we're praying for first responders, police officers and first responders. So you can, as always, you can kind of put your prayer requests in that chat. But if you know of somebody who is a first responder or a police officer, please feel free to throw their name out there, and we will pray for them tonight. Hopefully we can pray for a few by name and just lift them up before the Lord. So we've been going through this little book, Side by Side by Ed Welch. So we're getting kind of close to the end now. So if you haven't jumped in with us yet, it's never too late, but it might be a great idea just to get it and kind of start over from the beginning. Or if you're a small group leader or you're a mom or a dad at home looking for something to do with your maybe a little bit older kids, middle school kids, high school kids, this is just a great little book, short chapters that you can walk through together. Again, if you're a small group leader, this is already pre-approved. You can get copies of this and do it together as a group. And so we are in the section of the book, the second section, big section of the book, the We Are Needed section. So chapter 14, page 123, if you're following along. And this is entitled, Be Alert to Satan's Devices. And Welch says, when suffering knocks on someone's door, Satan too comes knocking. When suffering knocks on someone's door, Satan too comes knocking. He says, life is a war zone, and Satan is the enemy's strategist. He waits for those times when people are in the wilderness, vulnerable, desperate, and God seemingly far away or absent altogether. That's when Satan's questions about God's character, which might seem silly during good times, suddenly make sense. Why would anyone entertain Satan's questions about God's goodness when everything is good, but a few bumps in the road and our knowledge of God seems fragile, and that's what Satan is counting on. So if I'm going to walk side by side with you, if I'm going to be your spiritual friend, if I'm going to disciple you, you disciple me, if we're doing life together, one of the, he's right on target. One of the things that we have to be aware of is Satan. What is Satan doing? And so I'm going to do a little bit of work up here on the board and kind of talk us through some of the ideas from Welch's book. I'll kind of slip in some of my own thoughts as well as we go. So obviously life hands us all kinds of suffering, doesn't it? It hands us all kinds of suffering. So suffering can come in big and small packages. You get sick, you lose a job, she breaks up with you, a death in the family, coronavirus, all of these things, 101 ways for us to suffer. And so in every suffering, you have a test from God, and in that same exact experience, that same exact circumstance or situation, you have a temptation. You have a temptation from Satan. So a test from God or a temptation from Satan. So God allows these things into our lives. So let me just back up and help make sure we all kind of understand where I'm coming from. So God allows these things into our lives. He allows these hard things into our lives. Why? Why does a good God do that? Because He's testing us. And I know for a lot of you, we don't like that language. We don't like the language of God is testing us. But tests are always an opportunity. They're always an opportunity. And the Bible talks about them as an opportunity to trust God more. Right? How did Peter say it? The testing of our faith, right? That's the language he used. So it's an opportunity to trust. It's an opportunity to have faith. Faith in what? Faith in the goodness of God. So trust the goodness and the grace of God. So God puts us into these situations, or at the very least He allows them, these situations, these hard situations, sometimes terrible situations, but all of them, big and little, you're going through hundreds of them a day probably, and they're all opportunities to ask yourself, who am I going to trust? Who am I going to trust? So the political climate, who am I going to trust? My job, who am I going to trust? My family, my kids are struggling, my marriage is struggling. Who am I going to trust? Who am I going to trust? Who am I going to turn to? Will I trust in God's grace or not? So, in all of those tests, then the Bible tells us that there's this evil dimension, this Satan, the accuser, the devil, and the angel of light. He comes in. We see it all throughout the Bible. Where's my Bible? My Bible's over there. He comes in, and he's constantly taking the test, and he's twisting it into a temptation, into a trap, right? He turns it into a trap. He tells us basically to reject God, to reject grace, to do it on your own, to figure it out by yourself, or to just bail on it, to just emotionally check out, or physically check out, run away, any one of a number of things that can come. And then, of course, when we fall into the trap, that's when Satan, then he's such, oh my goodness, then as soon as you blow it, he's right there going, look what you did. Look what you did. Oh my goodness, I can't believe how terrible you are. So Adam and Eve in the garden, first he's telling them, look, if you eat that fruit, you're going to be like God. As soon as they eat the fruit, oh man, look at you. You're naked. Look at how you blew it. God can't love you anymore. And so that's the devil, that's Satan, that's what he's constantly doing to all of us. And then what Welch does is he walks us through, he calls them the 4 gardens. So he starts with Eden, the Garden of Eden, right? And so in the Garden of Eden, they had a test, didn't they? They had these 2 trees, the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. Would they trust their own way, or would they trust God's grace in the form of the tree of life? And then Welch doesn't go here in the book, but I'm just going to add in here, so like Israel then, they were in the wilderness. So that's another huge part of the story, of the test. And in that wilderness, they were constantly tested. So read Exodus sometime. It's like this constant test after test. We're hungry, complain. We're thirsty, complain. And so they're constantly failing the test. So these 2 stories, they show us human failure, how humans consistently fail the test. And they fall into the trap of rejecting grace. They don't turn to God's grace, even though God is constantly offering that grace over and over and over again. So from garden to wilderness, and then Welch takes us to the story of Jesus, and he shows us Jesus in the wilderness. So Jesus in the wilderness for his temptation, and he talks about how Christ was able to be successful in the wilderness. Again, what is Satan offering Jesus in the wilderness? He's offering him all the things that God is offering, but just without God, right? It's the same as the garden for Adam and Eve. You can be like God without God. But Jesus rejects all that. He says, no, I trust my Father. I love my Father. I will trust the grace of my good Father. And so then Welch takes us into Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. So from garden to wilderness, for Jesus, wilderness to garden, and in both of these, we have human success. Instead of human failure, we have human success. You say, human success? Yeah, remember, Jesus is a human, right? Jesus is a person. So Jesus is the substitute for Adam and Eve. He's the substitute for Israel. And now he's done it. He's done what Adam and Eve couldn't do. He's done what Israel couldn't do, and all the other people in the Bible that blew it. He has done it all. So now we have this human who is successful, and then Welch lands us in what he calls the resurrection garden. So obviously in between here we have the death of Christ and the resurrection of Christ. And so Jesus in the resurrection garden, now he can offer his success. His success can now be offered to us. Offered to all humans, can't it? That's the meaning of the resurrection. Because Jesus resurrected, and then he'll ascend, and then the Spirit will come. And what does the Holy Spirit offer? He offers Jesus' success through temptation to all of us as grace. So now we're back where we started. So we want to see all of our tests in life as an opportunity to trust grace, specifically the grace of Jesus Christ. I know it's turned into a big mess up here. I get it, but hopefully you're seeing it. Hopefully you're seeing it. So what does this mean? When I'm walking with you, when I'm doing life with you, when I listen to you, we are talking on the phone, or we're having lunch, or we're in small group together, and I'm hearing about this suffering that you're in, and I can say what I need to be perceptive of as your friend is, okay, do I see this person moving towards trust? Let me get blue going. Do I see this person moving here, or do I see this person moving here? Do I see them moving towards do it themselves, figure it out on their own, trust their own abilities, or even just quitting, a quitting mindset, a giving up mindset, a blaming mindset, a victimhood mindset? There's a million ways that can come out, that the tempter can trick us and trap us. Or do I hear you, see you moving towards, and do I see you looking at your suffering as that opportunity to trust the grace of Jesus? And so I'm listening for that. I'm seeing which path you're on, and I'm constantly pointing you to the cross. I'm constantly pointing you to the success of Jesus, which then becomes your shared success. So now I can receive it as grace, and then I can live in that grace, and I can say, look, in this suffering, in this trial, am I going to ask, we're going to pray tonight. We're going to pray tonight. Let me ask you this question. Are you going to just pray that God takes away all your pain and all of your sorrow and all of your trials? We can do that. We can do that. Or are we going to say, God, use this pain and suffering and trial in our lives to take our minds and our hearts deeper into faith and trust into what Jesus has done? Do you hear that? Do you hear how that's kind of two different ways of praying, isn't it? It's you can pray, God, take it all away, take it all away, take it all away. You can do that. Paul prayed that way, and God said no. Jesus even prayed that way in the garden, but then he submitted to the will of God, didn't he? He said, nope, we got to walk through this. We got to walk through this. So let me just challenge you. How are we going to pray? How are you going to walk with people? Are you able to walk with people and point them towards trusting grace, towards trusting Jesus? All right, it's a good chapter. He has several just kind of questions that you can ask. Page 128, 129, on to 130. I'm not going to read all those, but they're good. They're good stuff. So get the book, work through it. Just kind of incorporate some of these. He literally gives you things you can say, as you're talking to your spiritual friend. So it's good stuff. Okay, we're going to turn now to prayer. I'm going to kick us off. I'll pray. I'll move the mic up here. People that are in the room, you can come out and pray.